Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation and Appropriation now called to order. Today is Tuesday, June 18. The time now is 9:01. Wow, a minute behind. In compliance with the open government law, the notice for this public hearing were posted on GovGuam public notice portal on GTA's TV channel 21, Docomo channel 117, and the live stream on the Guam Legislature's YouTube. And also disseminated via email to all senators, all main media broadcasting outlets on Tuesday, June 11th, and Friday, June 14th. This morning, we'll be hearing Bill 236-37 COR, Committee on Rules, by request of I Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Governor of Guam for fiscal year ending December 30, 2025, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions, specifically for the Department of Correction. At this time, I ask the members of the Department of Correction panel to rise and be placed under oath by the Sergeant Arm. And if there's anybody else in your staff here, Director, just please ask them to please stand, so if they need to answer a question, they can do so. Sergeant Arm.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Arm. The rules for this budget hearing. Please provide my legislative staff with any documents for photocopy and distribution. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony that may be desired by members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance of the agenda, which is specifically the DOC's, Department of Corrections budget. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from participating and will be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this morning. I have Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz and the Oversight Chair, Senator Chris Barnett. And with that, I'd ask the Director to please present your budget, and I'd advise the folks that are on the panel, when you first speak, identify who you are, your position, title, position, and then after that, you won't have to identify yourself anymore. Director?
Good morning, Senator San Agustin. I'm Fred Berdaliu, Jr. I'm the Director of the Department of Corrections. Good morning, Vice Speaker Tina Muñoz. Good morning, Senator Chris Barnett. I'm here today to ask you to support the passage of this budget for FY25. I believe the total that were from the governor's request was $41,541,256. And this would also, if you look at the copy of the budget in front of you, it'll show what the number of total full-time employees at 257 with this FY25 request. And I've also provided a copy for each and every one of you of some of the issues that we have that's expected in operating from this budget, because we have certain, of course, things that we have to address at the Department of Corrections as we go forward in the fiscal year, finishing out this fiscal year, FY24, and going into the FY25. Some of the most important areas, of course, for the Department of Corrections is achieving our mission, and that was in our 2023 to 2026 strategic plan that we have posted on our website. With me today and accompanying me, just in case there are any questions, is our acting warden, Major Lazama, and then, of course, our Administrative Services Division Chief, Major Agustin, who handles the admin and finance portion of our agency's operations there in terms of admin and finance. I just want to say that if you really look at the budget in front of you, with the governor's request, you can note there's several increases. The rector's office, of course, has an increase. Adult correctional facility has an increase. on the budget, the Rizal Detention Center, the casework counseling service has an increase. Parole services have a slight increase too from the governor's request. Food services, which it was pointed out when we had our brief with the legislative finance, Steve Guerrero, because of the increase of inmates that we have, we're going to have an increase of food services. The correction revolving fund increases, and of course, we have an increase in unclassified, correction on that, classified employees by about 20. That's an increase. So the biggest, of course, cost being a line agency, and I said this one time during a hearing down here at the legislature, is personnel costs. If you look at what a starting salary of a corrections officer is, it would be about step one, 27,963.60 would be for a step one corrections officer, one if you hire them. If we had a we have a corrections reserve officer, thankfully with the legislator's support, they get a $500 stipend if they do 42 hours a week. And I just want to emphasize here with our corrections reserve program, over 2,000 some hours of reserve work time has been conducted, which is a savings for the corrections because they were augmenting security. They were providing some essential functions. That's why a reserve component is very important. Our parole officers, because we currently did have 2 promotions for our parole officer 1 to, I believe, parole officer 2, and we are going to be hiring, there's going to be interviews right now with Department of Administration on a parole officer 1, but the starting salary, if you really look at a parole officer, is in the area of 34,000 is a starting step 1. Comparably, if you look at the courts, probation starting salary for a probation officer is 43,811. So a probation officer at the court gets higher pay than a parole officer at Department of Corrections. Not saying anything, but just giving that as attention for the legislative body to see that there is sometimes that the difference between salary-wise, right? And I'm just saying, since I've been here at Department of Corrections in August, we're not having any major problems of parole officers leaving the Department of Corrections. They're staying, and I think they're motivated with the promotions, and they're looking forward to having an additional parole officers, and beef up the parole services division. And this is very crucial, I just want to say, and because we have their function when the parole services division has all these individuals that have been granted parole, they have to comply with their conditions. And we've had some stories, we had some media release of some parole violators who have committed some serious crimes out there, right? So that is going to be a major focus as we move forward in this FY 25 budget, that I'm really looking at our parole services division to step up to the plate in their enforcement and what other support can be done. And I have actually the blessings and the support of the administration, the governor and lieutenant governor, when they look at this, because they know as we look at the potential drug situation that we have there, illegal drugs, a lot of the parole violations have to do with relapsing and going back into the drug situation. And that also applies to our inmate population too, which is why I'm happy with the increase for casework and counseling services that I had just mentioned, because we are all going to bring on board another social worker, which is part of our case services counseling. They have a very essential mission to look at these inmates and look how long have they been incarcerated? Are they eligible for parole? Are they eligible for programs? And also to participate in one of the best programs that we have right now, and thank you to Guam Behavioral Health, and that is the RSET program, the Residual Substance and Treatment Program. That gives these inmates an opportunity to really own up to being their addiction and try and beat them. I will go ahead and just stop here because I did provide, again, the copy of the issues here from what can be expected, but the issues here in front of you that deals from our population issues mitigation, our contraband mitigation, staffing and hiring, recruitment and training, morale discipline, and then overtime status, the vendor payment status, new facility status, work education release programs, and recovery programs, as I had mentioned, RSET. So I'll just stop right here, Senator, and then feel free to ask questions now.
Thank you, Director. Generally, as I'm looking at the budget, you're only looking at 1.7 increase, correct? And that's to cover also your cycle and whatever costs related, which is really not much of anything, right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. And with that, I just advise you that number one, there's been an issue in the past that they were saying that you didn't have additional money to help improve and try to fix the Department of Correction. What we're going to do is, because in reference to the bill that I introduced that became law, the $5 million, we will make sure that's in the budget and available for DOC. If you choose to go to GITA and you wanted to borrow money to start renovating your compound, that'll be on you. Because I know the excuse has always been, well, the money was not there. It will be there. It will be identified, an additional $5 million, so that if you want to go to do renovation, fixing, which I know your oversight chair is looking forward to something happening, that will be available in the upcoming budget. All right? And with that, and I got the oversight, I got the vice, so I'll let the oversight go ahead and ask questions if you choose to. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mananasidulis, good morning, Mr. Director, and good morning to you, Major, and also you, Acting Warden.
Good morning.
You know, it's very straightforward, slight increase of 1.7 million, but I was speaking to you prior to the hearing, and it seems about just every time we get you in here, we hear about some scenario that's popping up at the prison, whether it's renovations, right, or overtime, or anything else really that you come here and say you just don't have the money for, right? And I remember last budget cycle we had put in an amendment where you got to keep your lapses, but the thing about it is you didn't really have lapses because you were a latsaitorui funds now. You guys are like finishing down to the penny on the overtime and all that. So I guess my question is, and I want to assume that everything is covered with this slight increase of $1.7 million. But, you know, I'm just going to ask you, is everything that has popped up, all the things I mentioned and the unforeseeables, do you think that this increase anticipates those things?
Thank you for that, Senator. I believe we work really closely again with, you know, with your office, with Senator San Agustin, the Legislative Finance, and with BBMR, and they look at the governor's. Of course, you've seen the governor's request, and when we're doing here, this isn't, of course, a strategic 2023-26 plan. It's a budget plan, and they're sometimes forecasting what can happen within the next, you know, year after September when the fiscal year starts again. I mean, we were blindsided by a pandemic, and there's a lot of uncertainties that can happen, right? But I'm confident, Senator, with the current governor's request and what can happen after when the new fiscal year starts, that we as a agency working with the legislature, working with the governor, can adopt and improvise. I use that as a part of the Marine approach. Should anything uncertain take place after September when the fiscal year starts, fiscal year 25.
Well, we definitely want to make sure that the funding is there, and what we want to avoid is, you know, any solicitation or anything that might go out to the community. Director, so on the contraband mitigation, we had read about the significant bust of crystal methamphetamine. that was subsequently taken over by the feds, and I believe that there's actually been charges handed down at the district court, right? But on your notes here, it says investigations, both local and federal law enforcement, are ongoing. I know you can't say too much about it, but are we looking at residual bust, I guess, from that initial significant seizure?
From that seizure and other seizures that we have current ongoing investigations that looks really promising for us to hold those individuals accounting for introducing or promoting prison contraband, especially drugs, into our facility.
I know that you had shared with me earlier, I think it was yesterday, that you're getting assistance from the Guam Police Department and the Department of Agriculture relative to the perimeter security. Can you elaborate on that?
That's correct. And Major Lezama, acting warden, is just pressing on that, and I'd like to thank her for, as she's assuming as acting warden, collaborating with Guam Police Department and Department of Agriculture to do some perimeter checks, but at the same time, our own security being vigilant in their checks of the perimeter, to include our Parole Services Division that also helps out too, to augment, to come up around and be making spot checks in our area. And as a result of a lot of that vigilance, again, one of the investigations locally that I won't elaborate too much on it, has come across an individual that is responsible for promoting contraband in these throwovers over the fence.
I really appreciate, I mean, I don't want to say proactive, right, because it came after the fact, but any effort to mitigate the contraband. I know in the charging documents that these inmates who were alleged, or I guess involved with this significant bust of crystal methamphetamine had said that they received it via quote-unquote airmail. Can you describe what that is and how this budget and your efforts as the director, as the head of the department, are addressing the problem of airmail?
Well, those things that are thrown over the fence, there have been various. They come in a wrap package, you know, and that's why with the protocol for us, we're adamant about having the Guam Police Department code, because once the police department comes, there's a case number and a report number on that, right? And at the same time, while we're doing that, we're sharing that with our intelligence unit right now that we established, and also with Chief Mike Kanata from Parole, who is our liaison with Homeland Security Marianas Regional Fusion Center, that has that intel too, because the moment we share some of this information about these throwovers and this contraband and confiscated and potential individuals names that are being named, a federal official or another local law enforcement official that's looking at the same thing in terms of intelligence and analysis may say, hey, I spot something that I could recognize, and this may be a similar pattern that's happening in their with their investigation on some of the names that might pop up. And that's why I'm saying it's very essential, again, that that these things, of course, are documented first with the Guam Police Department. And just recently, Major Lezama will tell you that we've even contacted the Guam Office of the Attorney General to ensure this, no matter what kind of contraband is found, whether it's thrown over or whether it's found in a bathroom, there might not be any suspects. We call the Guam Police Department to get a case number for that, because you never know, 6 months later or a year later, someone owns up and says that thing you found in that bathroom underneath the toilet was one of ours, and it was hidden by an inmate. And now we might have generate a case from that.
Director, it kind of seems like there's no relief, and we've steadily been, I mean, for the better part of almost a year, up around the 850, 900 mark relative to inmates, detainees being held at both the Magaʹhågan and the Hagåtña facility. So if I recall correctly, I think in the last budget cycle, we might have funded an extra one for Department of Corrections. So can you just with the number of detainees and inmates that you have versus the number of officers that you have on staff, how many more cycles would it take to get you to a level where, well, I don't want to say you're comfortable, but I guess a level where, you know, you're comfortable and we bring the associated costs of overtime due to shortages of personnel down?
I believe when I came on board in August, we had 150 uniform officers, and we didn't have a reserve force. Now we have about 180 officers, and that doesn't include the Parole Services Division that hopefully gets beefed up also in their personnel. And then, of course, we have a reserve force too, right? But for full-time corrections officer, even with the salary that I said, the starting salary there, you know, not saying to increase that salary for a corrections officer, because I believe it's the work environment that they have. Once that cycle graduated a year ago, you know, or I think the beginning of the year when we had those 30-some recruits, a whole bunch of leave forms came to me, individuals who want to take time off and see their families because they knew they have fresh bodies in there, right? And that was expected, right? And that's the challenge that Major Lazama has, that a lot of individuals put in for leave. But I told, I've also talked with Major Lazama and the other warden who's on vacation now, that we will not refuse leave. These people need to, they need some rest. They need to recover, and when they come back from their vacation, believe me, they're motivated to work. So the last thing, and even Major Lazama knows this, and we discussed this, is that about the work environment. As long as they feel they're empowered and we get them the material support, it's not about the salary and making money. This is a calling for them. And I believe, and that's why I said, even in the morale, discipline, force, mission effectiveness, progressive discipline, mitigation of grievances that they have, the issues that the corrections officers want to talk to me about. My office door is always open. Major Lazama's office door is always open, and Major Uggins. And the force will be, the biggest thing that I've always been adamant about is keep them informed what's going on, and we share that information, and they feel a little bit more easy, you know, in terms of working in the organization. And don't be distracted when you see pay raises for other public safety agencies, because, again, like I said, we're going to be looking at, on our this cycle coming up that we're forming, you know, to hire, a reimbursement, almost like, you know, the agreement that if they leave after they graduate,
payback provision.
Payback, yeah,
Right,
from
right,
100%.
right. Yeah.
If they stay long, if it was short, 100% payback, and then gradually 50% if they stay longer, right?
Okay.
So that we can keep the retention there.
Right. So 180 corrections officers, that increase is encouraging, but I know we've spoke before about the ratio, what are the standard ratios of corrections officers to inmates and detainees, but I think that's a little skewed given the aged facility, right? Because most of the time when you look at these ratios, they'll say, oh, 3 COs to 4 inmates, but that's in a facility that is new and is laid out with a design that kind of encourages supervision with less staff, I guess. So as it stands now, what is really to you an acceptable number of officers? You're at 180 now. Like, what is the...
I believe if we had in the area of 280 corrections officers, I'll just throw that number out, I'd be comfortable 280 corrections officers, right, on the force.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to also recognize Senator Canales joined us. Madam Vice Speaker, do you have any questions for the director and his panel?
Thank you very much, and Mananasi Zulis, Mr. Chair, and to my colleagues here, but also to the Department of Corrections for your team being here this morning. And I literally want to say thank you for your list of things. And as I was preparing for your budget and looking at the needs and seeing that there's a $1.7 million increase, still not enough for all the things that you would need. And as I was going through possibilities based on what is needed, I know that the oversight chair did kind of touch on to it on the ratio between the prisoners and the number of cells that we have. And maybe one of the questions I'd like to ask is, based on the number of cells that you have in the prisoners center, what is that ratio? How many in a cell to I guess the guard and the
We are facing an overcrowding situation, especially when you look at the Hagågan detention facility where the pretrial detainees, that's our largest population. If you I indicated here 458 pretrial detainees. That was as of September 15, 2024, right? And they haven't been adjudicated. So when you had somewhere in the area of 4 of those pretrial detainees in a cell, that is overcrowding right now. You don't want that, and that's where it goes from having to expand space, or where we rely on the judiciary when they come up with the decision to put individuals on pretrial release. So I would say when you have that overcrowding situation, you're definitely going to need a large presence of security officers there to ensure that they're monitoring them at the facility, and that would require sometimes with our reserve force. When our reserve force increases and helps augment the full-time force, they're doubling up, and it's not just one officer now. Now there's a reserve officer with that one full-time officer, and that presents some deterrence for any kind of violence that takes place or any kind of passing of prison contraband, whether it's up there in Manila or down in Agustin.
Yeah. So, yes, Mr. Chair, I want to say that I'm really appreciative because as I look at your presentation that's given before you, I know that when we look at the new facility status, you talk about the bids that have been received by the Guam Office of the Attorney General, and then the funding proposed for construction, and then the ongoing communications with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, right?
Yes.
And the communications with USMS, DHLS, and the military officials that are ongoing. I know the need for a new correctional facility is there, and I know that it's still going to take a while. I want to note that we, again, based on the oversight chair, the officers that are needed and even the increase of pay, and as I think that all these positions that you have are really CTP positions, right? Critically technical positions, because there's a need for it. Is there the update on the comparable salary rating? You shared an example of a parole officer starting at $34,000, but yet probation is at $43,000. What
That's
about
correct.
the start of a correction officer versus, that of other law enforcement? Is DOC up to par, or should we look at looking at the standard, the national standard, and working with them on that? Because I really think that out of all law enforcement is important. I know that the most complicated or the hardest may be that of Department of Corrections, especially because when cases get adjudicated, and then you talk about that potential of that overcrowding, it worries me. And it was music to my ears when the chairman of OFB said, we have an additional $5 million that we are going to work. Again, this legislature is committed to helping Department of Corrections literally give DOC what it needs. But as far as the position and the pay, are you, is it comparable, or do we need an increase? What can we do to help the officers?
I'll just say that with the current salary of the corrections officers right now, I don't anticipate it being needed to increase. But we are working Agustin has been working with and a proposal with the Department of Administration in terms of re-looking at corrections officer 1 all the way to the leadership, the highest, the warden, on what kind of qualifications or standards are needed, similar to the Guam Police Department, because in the corrections 1 all the way to the senior leadership position, it doesn't have the same standards like the Guam Police in terms of, like for a police officer 2, 15 credit hours of college, right? For a police officer 3, 30 hours of 30 college credits. A sergeant 1 has to have at least 60 or an associate's degree, right? And a bachelor's degree for a captain. Major Lozama doesn't need a bachelor's degree to be a major, but in the Guam Police Department, a major must have a bachelor's degree right now. So those are different, and if you're going to increase those standards, and I had a conversation with Major Agustin, that if they're going to increase any kind of education standards within our workforce, because they believe it'll be a more quality workforce if you're enticing the corrections officers, the field is changing, you need to get into education and invest in that, then I would certainly say then the salary should increase with that too. Because, you know, with that investment of them into learning, getting their education, a combination of experience and their college education, there should be also correlated with that an increase of their salaries too for the quality of that workforce.
And that's why I wanted to make sure, Chief, that this is that this literally works for the officer based on what they do and based on what they need, or at least to afford them that opportunity. As I look at your report and probably the need for DOC as it relates to the facility you have now, I know that you talked about the fencing and how contraband gets thrown over, maybe looking at adding to that with higher fencing. I know lighting, was an issue in the past. I guess I'm always looking to help the officers, especially with the increased stipend for the reserves. I know you need a camera system. How is your camera system to date?
That needs to be fixed. There are certain cameras that are not operating. We need that to be repaired. Some of these things have been from Typhoon Mawar too, with FEMA, and Major Lozama has been having FEMA inspectors looking at it. So everything from cooling systems, the camera systems, and connection electrical systems, and the infrastructure. FEMA, there's a lot of things that they looked at.
Yeah, so I guess what is the cost for the camera system for the entire facility if it's updated, refurbished to meet the prerequisites for safeguarding the facility?
I don't have that number, Major. Again, would you be the camera systems? Nope.
One of the issues with our camera systems, we do have several units with cameras.
Please identify yourself, Major Ogun.
Sorry,
Just so.
Major Anton Ogun. We do have some units with cameras, post 6, post 7, post 17. When we did the renovations for those units, the cameras alone were to do the cameras were $100,000. The cameras themselves were not expensive. They were probably 15 to 20.
Manpower.
It was the installation, retrofitting the housing unit to accommodate those cameras, the piping that had to run through the roof, and that does not include the internet. So these cameras in these housing units that we do have are standalone. So only the officers in that unit can see those cameras. And it's been already about 6-7 years, so it's time for replacing. But we're probably, the internet, on the assessment we did for the internet, and that's a crucial factor to having those cameras, is $1.8 million. And that was from OTEC that helped us do the assessment. And
when was that assessment done, Major?
Maybe 3-6 months ago.
Okay.
I've been working with OTEC and BSP, trying to get some money to get our internet for the housing units. And
so I think with that being said, and the proposal of the additional $5 million that may be infused into the corrections budget, I think we can look into that and getting the actual numbers. So maybe you can work with OAB to see that all the necessary equipment and like you said with the camera, you just don't need the cameras. The cameras are probably already installed. You need the internet and you need the manpower to run it and make sure that it's secured. And the training is there for everything else, because it's not just looking into, there's I guess, software that needs to be trained on, So I think if we can get a pricing for that, you talked about the 1.8, so we can get an update set to OB, that would be good. I understand that maybe even the X-ray machines, have you guys worked with the federal government to get any of that so that, you know, we make sure that the contraband's not going in?
I think, Vice Speaker, that's another area, I think, in terms of our, to sort of mitigate some of these, challenges and to look at how we could apply for grants and grant, because even when you mentioned the camera systems, it isn't just for contraband, also security. It's also for the Prison Rape Elimination Act, the PREA program, right? And we're exploring possibilities too of always what grant opportunities are there, and that helps, mitigate the local costs when the federal government can provide grants for camera systems for PREA purposes and for also contraband purposes. We're looking at all kinds of things. I think the Port Authority, a long time ago, I think they had an X-ray for contraband at the port, so that might be the same kind of model we will look at.
And as we look into that, Chief, I want to make sure that those things are there. So I even had our team look into, like, what do you need for training equipment? What do you need for your computers to update? Of course, we talked about the camera system, also the air conditioning in the facility. I know that was brought up before. And then your support, working closely with the federal funding to see where you guys are at with that, so that if there are resources that are needed to match, what can be included into that mix. And like I said, I'm hoping a lot of this can be included into the additional funding that will be provided for the next fiscal year. I know from the metal detectors to the emergency generator, because of the power influx, how are we with that?
Major Lazama can respond to that because she's brought that issue up and she's been looking at that.
Good morning. Major Lazama from DOC, acting warden at this time. I've been communicating with FEMA ever since last year. We had 3 site inspections. I'm also going on the grant portal, because so far there's only 2 obligated. And from what I saw, there's like the projects, there's like 37 projects. And so they estimated it at $2 million. So that's everything, includes the generator, all the repairs from lighting to the roads, to the buildings, the AC units, appliances. They did inspect everything, every unit. So we're just hoping and waiting to see. However, the local government still has to put up their share, because they're only putting in 90% of the share, and the other 10% has to be the local government. So that's what it is. But it's a big amount of money. I'm just waiting.
And Major Lazama, as I'm nudging with the oversight chair right now and seeing what we can do, I think it's important, as I'm going down my list personally, as I was looking at your budget and seeing that you only had a $1.7 million increase for budget year 2025, and I'm looking at my list of things, my laundry list of things that you need.
Yes.
So that you can run this operations, better, and giving the support for your officers, and then also making sure that the positions are literally compensated for the work that they do. I'm literally asking if you guys can work with the Office of Budget and, of course, the Oversight Chair and see what we can do. Because I always say I don't want to take away from you. I want to give you what you need. And I think it's really important because as we look for training for the, more training for the officers, even promotions because of the work that they do. And I understand that within the law enforcement, you guys also have a collaboration in working with the operation of SWAT.
Sharing information like that?
Yeah, well, like what they used to have with SWAT, and those teams that.
Special
that
Operation
the
Response
Special
Team.
operations, and I,
Yes.
those things are all key and important, and I really want to help. And if you're needing that, but yet your facilities are not in order and you need this equipment, please let us know, because we want to be able to provide that. You know what? I always tell everybody that comes in here when I'm sitting up here, if you don't want to ask for what you really need, please don't blame us when we're on session floor trying to deliberate where the resources are going to go to. So I always say, ask for everything that you need, because if you don't, then it's your loss, not ours. And I want to make sure that you guys are empowered to have all of that. And like I said, I have literally more than 25 action items that I see that you guys can work on, and I'm looking over the list that you've provided to us senators, and I think that there's more resources that are needed for you. And I'm really impressed that the oversight chair of OFB, Senator San Agustin, is looking at that additional $5 million, but it's not enough. So please let us know of all the critical things that are needed yesterday, especially as it relates to the cameras, as it relates to the training, as it relates to the aircon, the computers, all that. Please let us know.
Yes, ma'am. Just give us time to get all those figures. You know, especially last year with the typhoon hitting us, you know, it really takes time to recover. So we were just trying to work with FEMA. Everything was reported, everything was turned in. They did their site inspection like 3 times, maybe 3 or 4 times. I went with them 3, 4 times. In Magaʹhågan and Agana. They've seen everything. So they're trying to help us. The only thing is, it's just a matter of waiting. But once they approve that money, it's going to go straight to Homeland. It's out of their hands. Once it leaves them, it's going to Homeland, the recovery center.
Vice Speaker, I want to just add, and the generosity of the private businesses we've received some donations of paint and stuff, and you know, private sector has stepped up also when they looked at our agency. From their generosity, we received a whole bunch of supplies in terms of paint and sometimes hygiene products, and that helps out too, because it doesn't come from the government, it comes from the private sector, some excess supplies that they have, and that helps us in terms of the challenges we have for the inmates to ensure that they get the hygiene products or start refurbishing their buildings and painting. And it will be keeping them active, because Major Lozama has a lot of plans to keep them busy, especially with the paint supplies.
Another simple question I wanted to ask, Chief, is as it relates to communication from one guard to another guard, how is your radio system? Are you guys up to date on that? Like, do you guys got the latest equipment so that you can be able to communicate with every officer in the facility? I
believe we're still, using a private vendor in telecommunications, but the plan is, I believe, in the public safety radio system, the Guam Police Department has the lead on that, but I believe they, from what I've been informed, they've included Department of Corrections, and that is going to be very vital, because interoperable communications is a very necessary thing for us to coordinate our operations and response, and even the Guam Police should something happen in our facilities.
Mr. Chair, yes, go ahead.
Just to add on, thanks to our director, he did started the STIU unit, the Security Threat Intelligence Unit, and the Fugitive Apprehension Unit. So all these people communicate with the Homeland Security. He was the one that initiated that. And they work also with the federal government. So all these things about contraband and mitigation, right now, my advice to the public, be careful out there. We do have fentanyl here in Guam, and it did come into our facility. Okay, unfortunately, that drug, they lace that, the other drugs such as meth, they lace it with fentanyl. And that drug, the fentanyl, is 100 times more potent than morphine. So the individual, the addict that's a message to them outside. Be careful what you're consuming or what kind of dope you're smoking, because they're lacing it with fentanyl, okay? And also the fentanyl, from the information we got, the cartels, the Mexican cartels, the young ones, created, something like a blue pill that's like candy. So now those things, unfortunately, it came into Guam somehow. We have to be very careful. The one to get rid of that is soap and water. Don't use alcohol. Okay, so be careful. Use a mask when you're handling contraband. You have to use a mask and gloves, because
And that's why,
all those people out there, they better be careful when they're smoking drugs. It don't matter. Cigarettes, marijuana, methamphetamines, amphetamines, cocaine, guess what? They're lacing that with fentanyl.
and that's
and-
why, Major Lozama, I think it's important that the officers that are doing their best in the facility, that they are protected and safeguarded with all the necessary equipment, clothing,
Mask.
mask, everything.
Yes, sir.
I
Yes,
also
ma'am.
wanted to ask you, as you talk about what you guys have to look for and work with, is have you been current with your overtime status, and what was the last payment as it relates to all the officers getting their overtime? Because I know that you've been doing that a lot with your officers.
According to our former administrative service officer who transferred from our agency, she indicated our overtime is all updated so far.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, I just want to say we're going to continue to work with both DOC and you and the Oversight Chair to see what we can do to provide DOC with the necessary equipment, with the necessary staffing, with the necessary communications that is needed for everything that DOC needs to operate at 100%, because I think they've done an incredible job considering what you're facing with the number of inmates in there, the number more that need to be adjudicated, and I think we need to make sure that the security, that the officers are well protected. So thank you for giving me this
In addition,
opportunity.
I would like to add on, we do have GMH staff there and Guam behavioral staff that are working there, like psych techs. We have the RN nurses from Jipwick. But, right now their clients, like a total of 40-some clients from Jipwick. So, I've been asking my boss if it's possible if they can provide us with some of their security, to help us. But I think it's still in the infant stage of, Jipwick being a part of our facility. But we're willing to train their staff as well.
And that's an idea that we can closely work with, and we appreciate you bringing that up, because in the efforts, like I said, we've done it before with government entities working together, interagencies, to make sure that the programs that you stand up at the corrections, that everybody has a fair opportunity to get trained and secured into that. And Mr. Chair, I really appreciate DOC coming to the table and sharing their perspective. And like I said, I want to make sure that everything is provided for them. Santa Mosi.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Senator Canante, do you have any questions for the panel?
Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, everyone asked all the questions, so I don't have any further questions for them. But I thank you guys for your service again, and keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Okay, and just to close it up, you've identified air conditioning, you identified cameras and fencing. Well, computers, I'll let them figure that out. They probably can get that computers from DOE that's sitting around. But my main concern is that if we find the money to provide you, separate from the $5 million we're going to put in the budget is related to the construction of the new DOC. If we're fortunate enough to identify funding, my only concern is that when we do identify it and the governor signs off on it, that you spend it with some urgency, not drag it on and hopefully in the next 2-3 months. There's got to be some urgency because number one, you're going to need cameras. Major Algan already brought that up. You're going to need a higher fence, but that's part of your construction. See, the fencing will change. The air condition, the oversight chair already said, you got some issues with air conditioning. You just need to fix them. And I anticipate that whatever when we do find funding for this, we're looking at when you get the cameras, a camera should last, 2, 3, at least 4 years, and then be recycled. Okay? Getting the internet, that 1.8, I don't see that too much of an issue, and the reason why, because we do have some surplus money, but I'm not going to commit to everything yet until I know exactly, but I just ask you, whatever numbers you give us, easy on the padding, okay? Just point blank. Cameras is costing this much. Internet, we already know it's 1.8, 2-3 months ago. That should be already fixed number. Cameras, 110, maybe. Guys, I would predict you need an additional $1 million just for cameras. Possibly. Maybe even a little bit more. So we're already looking at 2.8. Looking at the fencing, that's something that you got to work with. One of the things I'm really concerned about is that we got a Guam National Guard here. They got an engineer unit. They have a red horse. Director, reach out to that director of DMA, and ask him. Because they do have the ability to do community projects. Okay? They can come out on their weekends or during their annual training instead of going off island and doing some projects at maybe DOC. Maybe we can help clear whatever you need to clear. They do have units out here that can do work. They can probably help set the cameras up. You know, help reduce the cost in some form or fashion, okay? Because they do have the expertise. They're an engineer unit, like I said, and there's a Red Horse unit, Air Force, so they can do things. And I know that the CBs are out here also from the Navy. You got ships coming in. Get them involved, Director. Reach out and do the Midas touch. Reach out and touch someone. They'll respond accordingly. And with that, there being no one else to provide testimony, I'm just going to close it up. Unless you have something you want to say, Major Lozama, nothing, right?
Sir, I have a lot of things to say, but it might take all day, all night. So we save it to take a break, right?
Yes. No, but, go on the computer, start typing them up.
Yes,
start
sir.
sending things to not only your oversight, but to me and the vice chair and even Senator Graham, because we're concerned.
Yes,
we want to find a way to help you guys.
Jesus Marcy.
Okay? And with that, there's no one else to present any testimony. I want to thank everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. The Department of Corrections budget hearing is now adjourned. The time now is, 9:54. Jesus Marcy, and please have a safe day. Take care.